Green Light, episode 24. Got a lot going on this show. We're going to talk about how my son doesn't like hamburgers. I'm going to play psychiatrist for Macon. We're going to talk about the Niners' ascension to a Super Bowl contender, a machine, really. And we'll talk about some of our Super Bowl themes. Are we missing anything?
Nope.
Okay, let's get this party started. Welcome to Green Light, episode 24.
You've already welcomed the people, and maybe you wanted to start that over because you've just said welcome, then we've played the music, and then you're saying welcome again?
I mean, I can't welcome you enough. I can't welcome the listeners enough, the viewers enough on this weird TV show type.
Well, let me
podcast.
speak for the listeners, the viewers,
And the co-host.
in saying thank you
Yeah.
for welcoming us.
I am your host of this podcast, Chris Long. This is my esteemed co-host, MLS extraordinaire, avid Virginia basketball fan, as we all are, but this guy, it's another level. So we're going to have to play a psychiatrist today a little bit. Unfortunately, that's not your prototypical psychiatrist chair. I thought about getting a chaise lounge for you.
Yeah.
The support is going to be offered all the same.
Thanks. I think modern therapy looks a lot different than how you picture it.
Like The Sopranos and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is it? Is that a personal question? What does that look like?
I think people stand, they sit, they meditate.
I talk to someone sometimes. It's okay.
Oh my gosh, everybody should.
Everybody should. I agree.
Literally everybody
And that's
should.
why you're here today. It's not just to punch the ticket or punch the clock as one of the best co-hosts in
golly.
Ryen Russillo, Macon Gunner. He's got this thing with Ryen Russillo. I thought we buried the hatchet on the live stream. I can't tell if it's a bit or not, if there's really a co-host rivalry.
I sent you a text.
Yeah.
We had a live stream talking about how many electoral votes George Washington got.
And the
that
history
first
buff,
election.
Russillo, was called into live stream.
Right. And the correct answer is 69. And Russillo gets on and says, oh gosh, yeah, I know about this. It was different back then. I want to say like 70, which is exactly what you would say if you had been watching the live stream and knew the question was coming. Hey, I know he's a well-read guy. I know he's a
Very
smart
well-read guy. He bought me a book that's...
Oh, he bought you a book that's thick and that just makes him smart?
Book was thick with 2 C's.
Yeah. All I'm saying is...
Ulysses S. Grant. They wrote it about like every minute. Minute by minute, they wrote about Ulysses S. Grant life.
I cannot rule out the possibility that he tuned into the live stream, looked up the answer to the question, and then acted as if it was in his big old brain the whole time.
I got to say, though, he had to have been watching because I think this is how we get guests on the live streams. I just text them impromptu. So he would have had to have been watching anyways. That's my only thing there.
Well, I know. I just think he was...
It's a better answer than 15,000, which is what I gave you in real time because I missed the electoral. There's a lot of...
we have fun on that live stream.
We do. We'll do another one here soon. Speaking of live stream, I'm going to do more watches like on YouTube where they're like reaction watches, but it's me watching a movie, enjoying myself watching a movie, and hopefully I can give my 2 cents. I want to start doing those soon, and one of the first ones I want to do is The Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia. It is I guess you could call it a documentary on some folks in Appalachia. And I'll just say this, for those of y'all who have seen it out there, I worried that the reference might be a bit esoteric. Yeah, sometimes I get the word right. But for those of you who have seen it, it is as you know, an absolute shit show following a family in Boone County, West Virginia, that has a pretty low life expectancy. I'll just put it that way. They live to the max. so to speak. It's an interesting watch. There are some light, funny moments, and there's some disturbing moments. The documentary is kind of one big disturbing moment, but in there you can find some levity. I think we'll probably hit that pretty early off the bat. You haven't seen it.
Of course not. I am seeing 1917 this evening.
Oh, great. You're going to go to the theater.
I am.
Please enjoy yourself.
Okay.
And prepare yourself.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Quite the movie. I talked about that on the Russillo pod. We haven't talked about this on this pod, have we yet?
No, because I haven't seen the film.
1917 is... Okay. I was going to say something really generic about it. It's a great movie. What's that? 24. Yeah, this is the 24th episode. So we've been doing a thing now for 2 episodes running where, corresponding back to back. We're corresponding with the episode numerically. We pick our favorite jersey number.
Our favorite player who wore that jersey number.
I'll let you go first.
Okay. You want to hear some runners up?
Yeah.
Junior Griffey.
Yeah.
I want to say that more clearly.
You say that a little bit more.
I was so geared up to
Junior
say
Griffey is
Junior Griffey that I flubbed it. King Griffey Jr.
Yeah.
Is not my pick. You thought that would be my pick.
Yeah.
It's not my pick.
It's probably everybody's chalk pick.
Swaggy. Kobe Bryant is a guy I've come around on.
Mm-hmm.
Did not like.
Mm-hmm.
Starting to kind of like his mentality.
The way he coaches youth girls.
Yeah. And Beast Mode needs to be mentioned as well. My big winner, we can pop it up. His name is Charles Woodson.
Yeah.
He played at the University of Michigan, wore number 2.
One of your favorite college football teams.
And that was, speaking of quick turnarounds, Michigan beat Virginia in 95 in the kickoff classic. It was a horrible 18-17 loss. Mercury Hayes, Mercury's rising in the end zone. Pretty good call.
Mm-hmm.
At any rate, I came around on Michigan because of Charles Woodson, only primarily defensive player to win the Heisman.
Right.
Played both ways. There has not been a non-quarterback or running back since Charles Woodson to win the Heisman.
Yeah,
gets picked by the Raiders, 9-time Pro Bowl. 4-time first-team All-Pro, 4-time second-team All-Pro. He's cool as heck.
Yeah. Seems pretty cool to me.
2 iconic jerseys in Michigan and the Oakland Raiders.
I think he finished wearing a different number, yeah?
Yeah, 21.
Yeah.
He went to Green Bay.
Yeah.
Maybe somewhere else even. But I really like that guy. In my office at home, I have a pillow.
Right.
That's made out of a black Charles Woodson Raiders jersey.
Right.
Woodson 24. It's a pillow.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, thanks. I am obsessed with the Heisman Trophy. Let me read you that Heisman Trophy
group
result.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Charles harder
Woodson
when you
won.
have to talk for a while. And
Peyton Manning, too.
Yeah.
Many people, some would argue that he should have won that Heisman Trophy. Followed by Ryan Leaf, a sophomore wide receiver named Randy Moss.
Yeah.
Ricky Williams, Curtis Enos, Tim Dwight, Cade McNown, Tim Couch, and famous Amos Zeraway, another sophomore running back at West Virginia.
A couple comments here. Ryan Leaf, who obviously had his issues, has become a major success story out of that group.
Yep.
As far as what he's been able to do and inspire people with his story of hitting rock bottom and coming out of it. He's been flirting with climbing Killy with our group.
That would be awesome.
And seems like a really good guy. I look forward to having him up the mountain. Also, you mentioned Tim Dwight.
Iowa.
It's a fast white guy.
Yeah.
I think he has a speed school now, which makes sense.
I'd believe it.
I think it's really hard to teach people to be fast.
Yeah. Incrementally, maybe you can improve, but if you don't have the goods from the jump,
it's difficult.
You're not going to be fast.
My favorite 24 was not necessarily fast.
Okay, then I know who it's going to be.
It's my boy Money Lynch.
Oh,
yeah.
I was wrong.
Yeah, hold my dick.
Nice.
That picture there is obviously the Beast Quake moment, and as he's cupping his
I got
unit,
it.
diving backwards into the end zone, and multiple Saints are looking on. The funniest thing about that play and any long play, iconic play in Super Bowl history, or not Super Bowl history, in NFL history, is the changing of speeds you see across the all 22, which is the coach's tape. When you're an NFL player and you're caught changing speeds, which is basically like you're jogging because you think the play is over, then you're sprinting, like you might as well jog the whole way. Because if you change speeds, you're getting reamed the fuck out in meetings. And
if you're just jogging, you can say I felt a hammy.
Yeah, I felt a hammy, or, hey, I'm just not really in it to give effort right now. But when you change speeds, it's almost worse. And there are a number of guys changing speeds in that play. Any iconic play, when you're on the field in a big situation, you should always run to the ball anyways. But if a great player starts running with the ball and breaking tackles, you better just run as fast as you can, because you don't want to be immortalized changing speeds. And there's always a risk to end up on an eternal highlight reel. Now, Marshawn and I had a lot of good battles in the NFC West, our D-line versus their O-line, and obviously Marshawn. Marshawn also put a plate in my hand trying to tackle Marshawn Lynch. This is, I have a plate in my hand. I can't flatten my hand. That's as flat as my hand goes. There's always going to be a little bit of curvature there.
I can't make a fist.
What's that from? Punching a wall or something.
Slow pitch.
When you didn't make a sale.
Intramural football or football. Slow pitch softball in college.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, there was a play at the plate. I was catcher because I was a liability in the field. Playoffs, so homeboy rounds third and is going to try to ball's coming to me.
Mm-hmm.
Ball in glove, hand covering ball. Standard technique.
Yeah.
Guy bowls me over, and then
kind of fucked up, is it not, in the intramural?
Yes, it is, but it was the playoffs.
Okay, understood.
Guy's running to second, so I need to throw it to second and pull the ball out of my mitt, and it just kind of falls because this finger is all of this is under this. And I was like, I looked at it, and I'm not one for that sort of stuff.
Yeah, you don't like gory shit.
Yeah. So people are like, what in the world are you doing? I'm getting screamed at, and I just hold up my hand, and people like turn away and start throwing up. And then I just put it into my belly.
I thought you popped it yourself.
I pulled it out myself.
Yeah.
Felt great for 30 minutes, and then it was some of the most excruciating pain.
War stories here.
Yeah.
Trading them.
Yeah, but I don't know that guy's name.
He wasn't beast
mode.
mode.
Who did that to you was Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah, Marshawn is an arm tackle, and the worst part about this is when you're playing Week 17, I think I've talked about this before, you're going to play as hard as you can, because if you don't, you're going to increase the likelihood of injury, but you also have to be very wary of the fact that when we were on the Rams, it was like, the respite at the end of a terrible season is always a nice warm vacation, and that you do get done early. Last quarter of a blowout or a 2-score game in Seattle, Week 17, stuck my hand out to make an arm tackle, getting held, and just exploded my hand. So,
getting held. Did you guys hear that?
Yeah, I was getting held. And Breno Giacomini held relentlessly. So I got this, and I got a Marshawn jersey. He's one of my favorite players that I ever played against. He's obviously there's some great runners up.
Yeah. Henderson, Ricky.
Yep.
Willie
Mays. 24 is one of the swaggiest numbers in sports.
Manny Ramirez.
Yep, Manny. Who all I can think about is with Manny is him fighting that coach with the Yankees.
Zimmer.
Yeah.
Don Zimmer, yeah.
That was totally out of line.
How about Rick Barry and Bill Bradley?
Rick Barry. I jumped on a trampoline with one of the Barrys.
John?
Yeah, I think. They have a place in Montana where we that Montana area where I go every summer up in the Flathead Valley, there's a big NBA contingency up there. Phil Jackson has a place. Steve Kerr rode a Sea-Doo with Steve Kerr one time. Rode on the back of the Sea-Doo like he was my dad, I think I probably put my hands around Steve Kerr. I was like 12, maybe 11. I don't know.
Are there any non-famous people there?
There's a ton of them. Frank Bukowski, who's also
famous.
an NBA player.
Famous.
But you said famous.
He's
How many
famous.
people on this? There's a ton. I mean, but per capita, there's probably more NBA players living in, definitely more white NBA players living in this one valley than anywhere in the world. I think they should probably do an outside the lines on it.
That's good stuff.
What if I told you?
Yeah.
Hustle guys retire at the same place.
I've got a 24 I did not like.
What's that?
I'm going to give you a hint and see if you can guess the person.
Okay, got it.
The hint is undulate, mommy E-I, uh-oh.
Oh, so that's Nelly.
That's right.
So was he wearing a jersey in that?
Nope. Call me Jeff Gordon and
Jeff
a black
Gordon. You don't
SS
like Jeff Gordon
with a navigation. I do not like Jeff Gordon. I did not like Jeff Gordon.
Why? Too clean cut to be a NASCAR guy.
Yeah, I wasn't a NASCAR guy, but I liked Bobby Labonte back in those days.
Yeah, okay.
For no reason, probably whatsoever.
Probably not.
Green Interstate batteries.
It's all about the logo, and that's the one sport I feel like that you're most heavily influenced by the logo and the brand.
Right.
Like not to. Who drives the Kodiak car?
I don't know.
Yeah, well, to me, you've got a tin of dip on your car. It's kind of interesting.
Jeff Gordon in those days just reminded me of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah,
the New York
got
Yankees.
you. He was the clean cut, buttoned up, no
Duke
beard
basketball.
on the Yankees. Yeah, I mean, yes, but by all accounts, a tremendously nice guy. He was in studio with Pops a couple weeks ago. My Pops picked up FaceTime, and he's like, "Hey," and he shows me Jeff Gordon, and I'm like, "I'm drunk." Okay. I think Jeff's probably okay. He's seen a few drunk people in his time as a NASCAR racer.
Yep.
So yeah, that's our 24 rundown.
Jack Bauer.
Yep, Jack Bauer. You know that the fuck is his name? Jack Bauer's real name in real life, the actor.
Sure, I'd be happy to tell you that.
Kiefer Sutherland.
Yep, that's right.
Kiefer is a musician.
These days.
Has albums.
I did not know that.
I want you to check his stuff out on your own time.
Okay.
Don't do it now. Please don't do it now. So a quick update. My son doesn't really like hamburgers. Waylon. With a name like Waylon, you would think he would really like hamburgers.
He's not that old.
Yeah, you're right. Do most 3-year-olds not like hamburgers, or most 3-year-olds picky eaters? Because my son took a bite of his delicious Riverside Lunch hamburger the other night. We went on a hamburger date. The entire date was predicated on, let's go get some hamburgers. I found out he was just playing me to go on a dinner date. Mm-hmm. Sat down, ordered a hamburger immediately, took one bite, chewed it for 23 minutes like it was bubble gum. I remember one time, I think just Waylon doesn't like red meat. Waylon had his first steak, and this was about a year ago in the summer. And he was convinced that steak was snake. So little bit of just a pronunciation mix up, but he was convinced he was eating snake, for 2-3 weeks, as we would grill out a lot in the summer. He took a bite of that fucker, and there were other kids there, so we let them go play in the basement. The kids, there's an older kid, a little gang of kids, and they all go play for a while while the adults finish dinner. This fucking guy comes up 45 minutes later, he's still chewing that piece of steak.
Now, did you explain to him what steak is?
We tried.
Is that worse?
Well, it's confusing to him because, it's like chicken is a chicken. You eat chicken, you're eating a chicken.
So he gets that.
Yeah. Steak is a cow. How do you explain that?
Right.
It's we don't refer to it as cow. So it must be confusing to a 3-year-old. Now, it's gotten so bad that he plays kitchen, kind of like he's got this little kitchen thing in his playroom where he cooks me a fake dinner and runs over with like yogurt, a carrot, some mustard, and he said, "Here you go, I made you a smoothie." So he's his food terminology, but he brought over a toy snake one time to my dad while he was playing kitchen. He said, "Here you go, Papa, here's your snake. Eat up." I was like, if this fucking guy brings a copperhead back in the house one day, thinking he's bringing me home dinner, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Has he ever made you fake food and you just say, "Hey man, this is shit.
This is a really shit meal"? No, I haven't. I have to act like every meal is like, terrible combinations. But yeah, shout out to Waylon, who's probably going to be healthier than me when he's older because he does not like red meat.
Got time to come around on that.
Also, quick tease here. Lane Johnson was in studio. We're going to push out about an hour plus interview with him. Lane was a surprise visitor. He was driving back to Texas and decided to text me in the middle of the night and ask me if I was up. I said, no, I'm not up. Why are you answering the text? I said, well, I'm just effectively not up. Why? He's like, well, I'm going to drive through Virginia here soon. I'm like, just on a whim, you're going to drive back to Texas? Yeah, I just feel like driving back to Texas tonight. So I said, you want to spend a day? That's great. Took him around Charlottesville. He really enjoyed the town, and we sat down and had a nice interview. We hit a bunch of topics. One topic we hit, which a bunch of people are going to love, is, there was the whole "Are we having fun yet?" Lane Johnson thing. He was talking about the fun in New England, and we hit that topic. He was very open on that and very interested in addressing it. If any New England Patriots fans are watching this pod, you'll want to tune in for that. We also talked about, Carson's year. We talked about, Super Bowl year. We talked about, his dad. His dad was a bull rider. Very East Texas cat. So interesting, funny, engaging dude. One of my favorite teammates, and it really comes out in the interview. Check that one out. It will be up here soon. Just keep an eye out. I can't tell you when. So are you ready for me to play psychiatrist?
Yep.
All right, hold on a second. I got to act like this is a real visit, not a podcast.
You want a copay?
No.
Okay.
All right, how do they do it? What brings you in today?
Well, Virginia basketball is 12-6 this season, coming off 2 years when it went 66-6 and won a natty in the most difficult conference in America, which it no longer is.
And how does that make you feel?
Well, golly, if you had asked me last night, like the world is ending, feels really bad. Today, as Coach Bennett says, joy comes in the morning. Perspective comes along with that joy.
Yeah.
And you realize when you lose 3 guys to the draft early, somewhat unexpectedly, it's not as if you're going to reel off 18 straight to start the next season. So we lose to the Wolfpack last night, and being down 11 late in the second half.
Feels like 30. Okay, that was my podcast personality.
After you've given your friend some money line advice, can you stop asking me, by the way? I don't gamble. When you ask me for advice on the Who's, I always think I'm steering you right, but I don't want you to gamble based on my advice unless I offer it. When you ask me, I feel obligated to say something. I did feel good last night. NC State has never won in John Paul Jones Arena. They shouldn't have last night.
Do you notice your body language is changing right now?
Actually, yeah. Yeah, but that's you is what I'm saying. You're a part of this.
Try to focus inward. This is an inward problem. Why do you take Virginia basketball so seriously? It's just a game.
It's interesting that you say that. Coach Bennett, after we lost to UMBC, would talk about how, it is just a game. And we have things in our lives that are constants. And he used a particular term that's not coming to mind. But I wanted to say to him, hey, dog, for some of us, UVA Hoops is number 1 on the list here, Did
you ever think that maybe has to do with maybe that you weren't good at basketball growing up, so you're living vicariously through the UVA basketball team?
I was great. And
this is a safe space.
No, I hadn't thought about that.
You can share the fact that you weren't very good at basketball.
Look, it's January, a lot of ball left. Bubble's going to be very weak this year. Who's can come back? Led with less than 5 minutes to go in all the 4 conference losses. So they're close. Need to score more is the point.
That would work. This has been a good visit.
Yeah. Thanks.
Well, in summation, I as your psychiatrist, I also really I really like Virginia basketball. I'm not like you, where I live and die with it because I'm overcompensating for a below average high school basketball career. I was a six man on a very successful high school team. So maybe that's what's going on here. So I like Tony Bennett. I realize that it's just the game. That's what we got to get to we both revere Tony Bennett. Maybe both of us need to start listening to him. I think only one of us is listening to Tony Bennett right now.
No, I'm listening. I listen to everything my coach says. We are in good hands.
There's a difference between using your ears and actually listening it, like the sound penetrating your ear and you taking it to heart and not crying in a closet after Virginia loses a basketball.
I'm not crying. I'm good. Listen, if you learn to use adversity the right way, it can buy you a ticket to a place you couldn't have gotten to any other way. All right?
Is that a Tony Bennett quote?
Yes.
Oh my God!
Borrowed from a TED Talk, essentially.
You got to love that. I saw there was a Coach Carter quote the other day that people were like, it was from that shitty speech at the end of that movie, and we covered that. It was like blah 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 blah. Coach Carter, and everybody was like, wasn't that the chick Marianne Williamson who just ran for president? It was literally her quote that Coach Carter used, and ESPN quoted it as Coach Carter.
Wow. That's awesome.
But you just quoted a Tony Bennett quote that was a TED Talk quote. Let's just move on from Virginia basketball.
Okay.
I don't think half of our listeners care about Virginia basketball.
I know they don't care, but they do care about sports.
Being a sports fan, I think that's an interesting offshoot conversation. Is that I think sometimes the fans take it harder than the players.
Yeah.
Because the fans. I don't know why.
Powerless.
They're powerless. They have no control.
Yep.
I think that's what it is. For a player, you roll the ball out there, you get beat. I gave it my all, and it hurts really bad, but I'm also still a professional athlete or a college athlete, and I think for some, there's quite the entitlement complex.
Entitlement?
Well, you seem like I don't want to go that far. I'm just saying that it's not that serious.
Okay, then I think we can have this conversation another time. It's very serious.
I just don't think it's that serious. I want to talk about something that you're working on your Virginia basketball fixation.
No, I'm not. I remain all in. I just have better perspective about being 12-6 coming off a natty.
Maybe you got to see another psychiatrist because I'm trying to work on some triggers with you.
Yeah, you are clearly not listening to me. I'm not going to work on this mattering less to me. I'm going to work on how I respond to losses and perhaps wins for that matter.
You do get pretty high after wins.
Not
like that.
Thank you.
Anyways, football talk before we get out of here. Let's start with the Niners. I don't know. One of these teams that I feel like everybody knows how good they are, but no matter who you are, you still doubt them a little bit. Are you on that page?
I guess until now. Now I feel good about them.
But here's the thing.
They've arrived in the Super Bowl.
Here's the thing, and I know they're really fucking good. It would not be hard to convince me that they're going to win this game. I'm actually leaning Chiefs if I had to right now. I think they were favored by a point. By the way, the over-under was like 54, and I like the over there. But the Niners, I feel like, have been this team that have run on doubters, and then the doubters fell by the wayside. But even the people that believe in them, I don't know if it's the Jimmy thing or it's the fact that they've come on the scene so quickly or they're a West Coast team. There's something just a little off. But the amazing thing about this ascension, and we mentioned it, second lowest winning percentage from 14 to 18. Only better than the Browns. So that's insane, and that's a ledge they fell off after the Kaepernick years.
Yeah, and that's 5 years of people thinking they're bad. That's a big part of why people aren't believing in this moment.
That's probably it. And I think there was also, for people, a lack of being able to look at those 5 years as what we just talked about, which is a half a decade. It felt like just this long ago, the blink of an eye, they were playing the Ravens in the Super Bowl, and then that collapse, and now we're built right back up. And a lot of teams, windows open and close, but to have two big windows open up within the span of a decade, it's pretty remarkable. Most players, like a Joe Staley, get to see one window, not two. And that's why I think, Joe's an interesting guy I'd love to talk to at some point. We used to play against each other a lot. I know Joe pretty well. In the offseason, I'd love to have him on and ask him what it was like to feel like you just missed the boat on being a champion. And a lot of times when that happens, whether you think the window's still open or not, you might not think you're ever going to get back there. When I talked to my dad about what he learned in his career, one of the first things he talked about was when he went in like 83 as a second or year or rookie and played Washington and beat them in the Super Bowl, he assumed, hey, we'll be back. And me, I never had that experience for much of my career, so I can't really speak to that. I think by the time I got there, I really appreciated the moment. But most young guys you talk to are like, man, I thought that would be easy. I got on a team that looked like the window was wide open, and we never got back. So for a guy like Staley, who's been a really good player throughout, you had to wonder if he was just going to rot away in San Francisco. But here he is, and he's back. So one guy that, took a lot of shit throughout his tenure, and obviously there's talk about nepotism and, guys getting jobs when they're young and ownership, not selling teams, and most times it's just handed down through the family regardless of somebody's capability of running a team. Jed York, who's 39 years old, has now overseen 2 Super Bowl appearance teams with 2 different head coaches, and puts him in a bit of an elite group as an owner. He's 39 years old. He hasn't been on the job too long. But that triumvirate, am I using that word correctly?
Yep.
3 folks, 3-headed monster here.
That's right.
That youthful 3-headed monster of Jed York, Shanahan, who's in his late 30s, still younger than York, and Lynch, who's in his 50s, have done a great job together. They've worked in one accord. Before the 3 started working together, after 16, when Balky and that crew was fired, and York was taking a lot of heat, they were 7-25 the previous 2 years, and then 10-22 in their first 2 years together. That is Shanahan and Lynch, and both hirings were like questioned a bunch. There was Shanahan because of the nepotism thing, his age. He was kind of getting swept up in that young boy wonder, phase that McVay was the poster child of. And obviously they spent time in Washington as well. Taylor in Cincinnati has been kind of fit the bill there. You had Kingsbury, who seemed to be a boiling point in this conversation for guys that were just getting jobs right off the bat because they were these young offensive minds or they knew somebody. Shanahan has proved himself to be probably the wrong example if you're pointing to, guys that couldn't coach and just got in the business and were too young. He's actually paid his dues. Now, of course, we did a whole pod on this, so nepotism is most important, in my opinion, at the lowest levels, how guys get in the door. So Shanahan did, by virtue of being Mike's son, get some doors open that others haven't, and we've documented that. But in his defense, he has put his work in. By the time he was hired as a head coach, he'd been in the league 14 years. And, out of that class of folks that got hired in 17, he was right in the middle of the pack there. And there were some older guys in there. I think the 2 guys that had longer tenures in the NFL, coaching-wise, were Anthony Lynn with 17 years and Doug Marrone with 15 years. And Shanahan, clocked in at 14 years on the job in the NFL. He had paid his dues and had done a great job in Atlanta. A lot of people talk about 28-3. Well, you have to score 28 points in a half on the number 1 defense in the league. We were giving up 15 points a game at that juncture. So, him not running the ball at the end of the game is one bad quarter. It also took a defensive collapse. So there's that.
Holding.
There was a holding. There was a great edge rusher that drew a hold that a lot of people forget.
People do forget about
People
that
do
hold.
forget about that hold.
Yeah.
Julio Jones toe tap on the sideline. It's over.
Out of field goal range for that hold.
Yep. Would have been an 11-point lead. I did my job, as they say.
Did they kick a field goal and miss it, or did they punt it?
They had to punt it. Well, Trey Flowers had a sack, which knocked him back to like the 30, and then the hold knocked him back to like the 40.
Right.
So teamwork makes the dream work. Trey, the man, and then I did my little part there. I wish I'd have had a sack because it would look cooler on the stat sheet, but I instead I got the chokehold there from Fisher. Anyways, Shanahan is not the poster child for not putting in the work. I mean, McVay was in the league 7 years, and obviously it's played out well for him. But McDermott was hired that year, and nobody gave a shit about him. He was 8 years in the league. There was another coach that was 12 years. Who was the guy that got hired in Denver in 17? Do you remember?
I do.
Can't remember right now. Cowboy Reed's going to know.
Vance Joseph?
Vance Joseph. He was 12 years in the league. So there were guys that paid their dues, that year, and there were guys that came in quick, but I think Shanahan got swept up in that whole conversation. And even so that, like, Mike, his dad, Shanahan, who's obviously a legend, but most kids nowadays, the nice thing for Kyle Shanahan is that most younger people probably don't remember Mike Shanahan like that. I play with a lot of guys who 10 years in my career were like, wait, your dad's that guy on Fox? 23-year-old kids and shit like that. So generationally, it's nice for Kyle to kind of stand in his own spotlight, and he's done a great job. And Mike was, the first guy that was like, hey, I'm never going to give you a job until you check off some of these boxes, one of which you have to be a coordinator for another team. And obviously, 14 years he paid his dues. But the thing that Jed York did really well was he cut bait with some of the guys he had in 16 and made these hires at the same time. Well, he hired Shanahan first, gave Shanahan the carte blanche to bring in, whatever GM you'd like. And I actually like that sequencing because it is a coach's league now. It's Parcells famously said, if I'm cooking dinner, I want to buy the groceries too. And that was kind of the thought process when you have your guy in Shanahan. By the way, they hired him over McDaniels. I can't see how that wasn't a good idea. Here you are sitting in the Super Bowl. Who knows what McDaniels would have been able to do, but Shanahan has revolutionized the way you're running the ball nowadays in the NFL. He's brought the throwback flavor with the up-to-date flair, and him and Lynch being hired the same time to twin 6-year deals ensures there's no lame duck shit. I mean, it is, we're in this together. And Shanahan did not have to defer as much to Lynch as he has because he had the ability to accrue all the power. He was like, this is a team effort. We're going to watch film together. I'm going to learn from you. You're going to learn from me. I think it was more Shanahan humbling himself and saying, like, I'm going to learn from John Lynch, who was a great player. I've been coaching the league for 14 years. I know a lot from my pops. I know a lot from coaching. We're going to work together. We're going to get a Stanford professor to kind of audit the process with which we settle disagreements, the way they argue down to, they had it all planned out. This is the thought. This is the protocol when we have a disagreement on a player. This is the protocol when we have a disagreement on a scheme, like this sort of thing, and like how the players fits into that scheme. So they actually outsourced somebody, to give them some direction in that process, which is kind of unheard of. They did all their arguing in private. Even the first 2 years when they struggled, 10 and 22, there was no throwing each other under the bus. There wasn't any ownership throwing the front office under the bus or coaches under the bus or the other way around. They kept it I don't know what the word would be. They kept it.
Well, they were patient.
They were patient.
Plan in place.
They had a plan. They stuck to it, and I just think they did a great job. And John Lynch even talks to the team sometimes. I mean, that's kind of for a GM. Obviously, not every GM was a great player, but John Lynch. Why wouldn't you allow your GM to talk to the team sometimes? If you are on the same page, that's cool. If Shanahan and his emotional intelligence and awareness and humility to invite him in. And I think part of that is because he knows what time it is. When he gets a job, he's the young dude. He's the guy with Mike Shanahan's last name. He's the guy who a lot of young players are going to look at and be like, I'm almost your fucking age.
And you're wearing a terrible hat.
You're wearing a terrible hat. You look like a Manhattan Beach dad.
Yeah.
But he's humbled himself, and I think this is who he is, but I think it's also the intelligence emotionally and socially to say, I want to bring myself down to the players level. I'm going to do things like, defer to John on stuff. I'm going to bring him in and talk to the team. We're going to be on first name basis in the building. Players calling coach and John first name basis. Not every place is like that. And I think they've done a good job of implementing a culture that works for them. Obviously, the scheme has to be great. They have that. And when you talk John Lynch, he copied Ozzie Newsome a lot, or Harbaugh, really, more so. He worked that way backwards. But he said, how do they do things in Baltimore? That's one great GM-coach relationship, which when you talk to coaches in the NFL now, that's something that people take for granted is the GM and the coach being on the same page. And it's not that way everywhere. And on winning teams, more often than not, it is. And when you look at Harbaugh and Ozzie, they're an example. Schneider and Carroll, example. So much so that players that came from Seattle to play in San Francisco said, we like this as a setup, kind of like the one in Seattle that worked. So cool system, great scheme, great players, but also a culture that is reinforced by everybody being on the same page. And that's something you take for granted in the league. Now, they made a bunch of good moves drafting people.
Yeah, 19, 18, 17, 16, they had top 10 picks last year thanks to Jimmy G being hurt in that 4-12 record. But they hit on Bosa, they hit on McGlinchey, mostly have hit on Solomon Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good player. He's a depth guy, obviously top of the draft.
And they hit on DeForest Buckner.
I think people would push back on the Thomas thing, but I also think he's been productive. And, it's also not his fault that they reached a little bit. I mean, he seems like a great kid. Seems like he works hard. Now, they also have 4 really good fucking players up front. So I don't know if Solomon Thomas would start somewhere else. I think part of the reason, and by the way, they've really built through all 3 levels. That's one thing that not every team is doing. Draft, trades, free agency.
Yep.
You can't be a team these days and just be like, we're only building through the draft. We're gonna build fast and trade a bunch of people. I think when Stephen Ross hit the reset button in Miami is a great example. They were just trying to outsource talent, guys who were older and were costly veterans. They had to hit the reset button a little bit and accrue draft picks and just say, fuck it, we're gonna blow this thing up. I'm sure though, if they're smart, they'll not only be active in free agency, but they use those picks well and make trades where they have to. But when I get back to talking about the perception of the Niners, and by the way, there's 5 players that started against the Vikings that were that preceded this 3-headed monster in coaching and front office. So there's been a ton of roster turnover. I think the reason that people don't take them they take them seriously, but there's a few reasons I think they're not viewed as this powerhouse. One is they were 4-12. They're one of 3 teams that won 4 or less games and made it to the Super Bowl the next year. I think it was the 88 Bengals, 99 Rams, and now this team.
Yep.
So
that Rams team won. Big
Bengals
game.
lost.
Bengals lost.
I think that skews some people's perception. It's like, I believe what I'm seeing, but I'm not quite sure. I also think the draw they got in the playoffs so far has strengthened some people's. I mean, like what they did the other night was really impressive, but the Packers were overhyped all year. They were suspect in the run game. The Vikings, people, don't believe in the Vikings all year long, and then they beat up the Vikings, and depending on which way you want to go with the argument, you use it to your advantage. I thought it was a good win because I think the Vikings are a good team. I thought the way they beat the shit out of the Packers twice now, which is really hard to do, is impressive. I thought maybe that, it would be one of those situations where in 18, when I was with the Eagles, we got beat like 48-7 by the Saints down there. And a lot of times you look at that blowout, and the reason it doesn't make a shit is because you played your worst. And it might be a bad matchup anyways, but you might have had injuries and teams change. Well, we went and played them in the playoffs and quite easily could have beaten them. Same place, same players, a couple injuries here and there, but teams change through the year. For them to do that and win by, damn near 3 touchdowns each time, they won by about 30 the first time around. That game was not as close as it finished the other night. It's impressive. Maybe it's because their quarterback was a backup in New England, and I think there's some stigma there unless you're like a high pick and then you're a backup like an Aaron Rodgers who's biding his time for an inevitable franchise takeover. I think people judge you, and that stigma sticks around. I know there's the fact that he's only thrown like 20 balls in the playoffs thus far.
Yeah. He went to Eastern Illinois.
Maybe it's because they're a West Coast team. I don't know. Maybe it's because everybody's like, this is more of a scheme thing for them offensively, which it's very scheme dependent, but everywhere is now. I mean, Andy Reid, they got the players over there that everybody knows are awesome, but Andy Reid scheme in Baltimore, Greg Roman's scheme, scheme matters. So just because, Shanahan plays a big role and he's almost like a star in the movie doesn't mean these players aren't great. They have a ton of great players.
Well, everybody likes to see it thrown all over the yard. I mean, Sean McVay is the flavor of the month. All of his coaching tree branches get hired.
Yep.
Chiefs throw the ball a lot. Mahomes is dynamic.
Right.
If you want to see something different, okay, Lamar is cool.
Yep.
But if you are handing the ball off, wait, nah, that's my dad's NFL.
Yeah, but the thing about your dad's NFL and my dad's NFL is the run designs were so much different. And we talked about it. Maybe it's because they use the fullback. Maybe it's because they got a blocking tight end. And maybe it's because – but they're the same functionalities, but they look different. Kittle is not an imposing guy physically. He just blocks his ass off. Juszczyk does not look like a 90s, cowboy collar wearing fullback. He looks more like an H-back type. Like, hey, guy, you can move him around. And that's because he can do a lot of different stuff. You see him knocking off a free runner on a play. He's not even supposed to get a piece of the runner. He's faking, a crackback block or a BIM block, and then he's going to the second level. He's catching the ball out of the backfield. Like, everybody blocks. Everybody's interested in it. Their O-line, it's not like, to me, I look at that O-line, it's like, damn, they're maulers. That O-line in San Francisco, when you had Gore and all those guys, you had, Davis, you had Boone, you had Staley, Ayupati, Goodwin. They were maulers. This group, they care about the scheme and they execute it to the best of their ability, and it's a great dynamic scheme. Look no further than a player like Mostert, who a lot of people freaked out about the other night because they're like, he was on my team and he didn't do this. This is how bad, evidence of how bad my franchise is. Well, maybe so, but you're not alone. There were 6 teams he didn't do this with. And Raheem is a perfect example of the type of guy. Listen, I think part of why we don't take them the way we do like Kansas City is because their players were either guys that kind of came out of nowhere or guys that were recycled, albeit great players. Richard Sherman, they got him off an Achilles. That's supposed to be game over for a skill guy like that. They've gotten everything that you could ever want out of him. They brought over Quan Alexander, who's awesome, but he was a small market star.
Free agent.
Yeah, but a small market star.
Weston Richburg wasn't good enough for the G-men. But
again, a position that's not a star position. They hit on that. they, Kittle was not a guy that was a superstar more than a year and a half ago. Jimmy G's a backup, right? Before he comes over to San Francisco, he's probably a system guy to everybody.
Kittle, a 5th round pick.
Yep. Which is insane. And I know that Iowa tight ends, nobody's going to get 100 looks.
But now they're 1st round picks. Hawkinson last
Right.
year, Noah Fant.
Yep. So you've got guys like that. I mean, you've got Deebo Samuel, who you were never surprised by, but he was a 2nd-tier type star receiver in the NCAA.
Yeah, played at South Carolina and sat out the bowl game against Virginia, which is, hey, I'm hot stuff move.
Yeah, well, he turned out to be hot stuff.
Yeah.
A number of their players, even on the defensive line, you got Bosa, who's a rookie, Armistead, who Eric was supposed to be a bust. That's what everybody said. But it goes to show you how much the scheme matters. They had him in like a read technique scheme, and it wasn't until they changed it up and said, go attack, did he really take off. So you got a guy everybody thought was a bust. You got a rookie. You got a guy named Buckner who nobody ever paid attention to because the teams were bad, and he's really, really good. He's always been really good. And then you got an outcast from Kansas City who blew their season up last year jumping off sides in D Ford. The list goes on of guys that are not traditional stars in the sense that they've been in this franchise, in this market, tearing it up for years.
Yeah, I don't think you mentioned Tevin Coleman yet.
Tevin Coleman, who was a guy who was part of the two-headed monster in Atlanta, and we played him in the Super Bowl. He was just as impressive as Freeman, but he was always the Robin to the Batman of Freeman.
And maybe he is now the Mostert. I know he's banged up now too.
But it's Breida.
Jeff Wilson even seemingly gets 5 yards a pop. Bit of a tangent.
Yeah.
Are you taking a running back in the 1st round or the 2nd round after seeing something like this?
No. But you're also not, Shanahans don't grow on trees.
I understand that. But it feels like another position is better used with a top pick than the running back.
And that's been the thought process in the league for a while here. And now we're talking about paying running backs. I think there's a lot to it because you can take a Saquon Barkley. God bless him. He's probably one of the best running backs I've ever seen on the field with me. And he might waste his career up there.
Yeah.
Because they can't do it all. And he can't wait a decade for a Shanahan to walk through the door. And
he's got a Shanahan now. His name's Jason Garrett.
Yeah, okay. Real cutting edge stuff going on up there in New York.
Hey, Cowboys had the 2nd ranked offense when Garrett was OC there.
Okay.
Sure, just saying.
Okay. So good for the Niners. A lot of respect for a lot of those players. Easily likable team.
Yep.
But people still seem to not be giving them their due.
Agreed. What are they going to wear in Miami?
So that's a great question. I think they need to wear, if I had my druthers, and we talked about this, I like the Niners throwbacks, all white, and I agree with you on the Kansas City side. Would you say the monogram?
Monochrome.
Monogram would be what
too much shopping.
Shopping for my lovely home and my lovely wife and my children. We don't really do the monogram thing, by the way. I'm not a big monogram guy.
Yeah.
Get that shit out of my soul space.
Yeah. If the No Fun League mandates that the Niners go traditional away uni,
yeah,
it's still a good uni. The question is, will there be too much red on the field? Because the all whites, they're wearing white socks with that.
Yeah.
With the traditional road, they put on those red guys. It'll be a lot of red. But I think if KC goes monochrome, color rush, all red.
That's the biggest catalyst for me is if Kansas City goes all red, then that opens the door for the Niners to go all white and the throwbacks from their NFC West days where they shared the NFC West with the Panthers, the Saints, and the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah.
So I think that's the best Super Bowl combo, in my opinion. Super Bowl themes this year, obviously you've got the most pass-happy team in the league and the most run-happy team in the league. But it's this weird marriage of, analytics freaks and, coaches tape hardos can kind of agree that this is an enjoyable Super Bowl. I don't think whatever your flavor is, I think that the run game is dynamic and interesting enough on the San Francisco side to appease the analytics folks. The way it's executed and carried out. I think even old school grunts love to see Patrick Mahomes sling the ball around the yard.
Yeah, I think you're right. I just realized
Yeah.
what we've been talking about for half an hour. The Niners aren't sexy. I was thinking about the ideal matchup. Probably would have been Chiefs-Saints. Old school,
That was
new
my
school,
pick for the Super Bowl.
but tossing it around the yard, Kamara.
Yeah.
Yeah, contrast of styles. I think it will be interesting.
Another thing is like it's a big yards after the catch offense for San Francisco. It's like an in cut, a slant that goes for like, or Kittle finds a soft spot in the zone and, just breaks 15 tackles. Like it's not like you're wowed with quarterback play. And and Jimmy G needs to be New Orleans Jimmy G, not the last 2 weeks. And that's why we'll find out. If they pass this test, no one should ever slander the Niners or Jimmy again, because what it's going to take is for him to make throws. And he's done that at different junctures this year. Okay, there are two quarterbacks with the fewest starts combined in the history of the Super Bowl. That's interesting, not that compelling to me, because I think that you have two unique situations. You have a program that was built out partially for Alex Smith, and their window was wide open, and then they just landed this kid in the middle of the first that, quite frankly, should have been,
first overall,
done deal weeks before the draft. And then Jimmy was obviously a trade, and I think that, to your point, they were a good team last year, but his injury skewed our perception of who they are.
And got him Bosa.
And took away starts from this statistic where he would have accrued 12 more starts.
Yeah.
So the one for me that's interesting is the D Ford storyline. I'm watching the game and I'm like, are people talking about the fact that you've got a guy who kind of blew it for them last year, and I like D Ford a lot. I mean, that offsides was my worst nightmare in football. Like, getting to that stage for me and having waited 10, 11 years, you're out on that field. There's so much adrenaline. Your job is to get a good jump, especially a speed guy. And I look back at the Super Bowl against the Patriots and, against the Falcons. I was humming off the ball, and I was not thinking about jumping off sides. I know D Ford wasn't either. That could happen to anybody. And, lining up in the neutral zone, it's a nightmare, on the biggest stage. And to think that not only would he have a chance to rectify that situation,
with another club,
but against your old team,
yeah, it's wild.
I can't tell if he's excited or it's a nightmare for him, because I will say, when I left New England, it wasn't like it was bad blood, but I would love to have proven to them that, there was a reason I thought I should have played on the edge more, or, been more involved down the stretch. It was never a vendetta, but once they're there, it's like, oh my God, this is really happening. For me, when I left, it was more of a question of if I'd play in a Super Bowl again, because I was going to the Eagles, not some traditional powerhouse. It wasn't a question of, like, if I get there, there's a 50% chance I'm going to see the Patriots.
Right. And in that AFC Championship, were you rooting for the Patriots? Did you want to see them?
Well, I wanted to see the Jags because I knew they weren't as good. But the Jags, who led a lot of the game, and there were some calls in there that went the Pats' way, etc. And, of course, the Pats will point out the Corey Clement touchdown the next Super Bowl, but they're in the Super Bowl. But, we watched that game in the locker room before our game. I don't care what anybody says. Like, the TV's on, guys are watching. I'm getting taped up. Like, who are we going to play?
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit. We could go upset the Minnesota Vikings, and all I have to do then is go out and beat my former team, which is the biggest dynasty in pro football. And if you lose, especially because I left on my own will, under my own will, where, D was traded, or they let him walk.
D was traded. Yeah.
D was traded. So, like, D's traded away. So even if he loses this game, it's not like the end of the world. Like, I left. I willingly left. So if I lose that game, it would just everybody waiting to point the finger, and LeGarrette as well. You guys don't care about winning. Told you. You fucking lost. You guys are dorks. Nerds.
Good thing you won.
Oh, my God. Such a relief. So I can only imagine what's going through D Ford's head right now.
You hit that Case Keenum.
Yeah, I hit that Case Keenum. Still get chills.
Adjusted the football. Yeah.
Thing did one of these. But yeah, that's what's your big theme with the Super Bowl? You got anything?
My big theme with this Super Bowl?
Yeah, with this Super Bowl.
I think it's the color red.
Yeah, it fucking sucks.
I think it's the contrasting styles.
Thank God it's outside at night. Appreciate you guys listening. We'll catch you later this week.
I got a correction for you.
You do?
Yeah. When did Howie Long, in what year of his career did he go to the Super Bowl?
84.
And what year of his career?
Third.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that big a deal.
Okay.
But yeah, you're right. I mean,
You said it wrong.
Yeah, I said it wrong. And that's what the corrections are for. And you're very good at that.
Thank you.
So watch the Lane Johnson interview if you have time. It is going to be it's going to be funny, and you'll get to know him a lot better. He's a great dude, and we'll be back Saturday.
Take care of yourself.
Y'all take care.